Huh.
Hey guys, it's Dane at Jonah Guitars, and I got a brand new build series I'm going to start uploading. It's about this guy right here, the GECKO, and all of the whole process of building will be covered. It's going to be a very complete series. So I hope you join me, and we'll see you there. A little bit. This is a ridiculously large blade for cutting this out. But I don't want to change the blade just for this. I do actually have a jigsaw, but I don't want to set it up for this either. So I'll just do some quick and dirty cuts on this, and then take the rest of it down with the sander. And I'll take a picture of the sander. But when the sander's running with the vacuum cleaner going, it's just too loud to get good video on anyway. So, and I'm not even going to turn my dust collector on for this, so I'll run it just the bandsaw without the dust collector, and then later on I'll clear it. Here we go. So I'm pretty close to my lines. I didn't want to hit the line because I'm going to sand primarily. I'm going to sand to the line, because when you trace the inside of a template with the pencil, right, the pencil's already on the small side. So, but with cover plates, when you lacquer the back of the body, or lacquer the body period, I mean, you're going to have some buildup that kind of runs down, you know, next to that edge. So it's kind of tricky to compensate for that, but you don't want to go back in after the fact either and try to scrape lacquer back to the edge, because that can foul you up too. So just kind of try to guesstimate how much lacquer you might have on the edge of that opening. So anyway, like I said, I'm just going to take a picture of the sander, show you the process, but I'm not going to run this for long with all the noise. Okay, I don't know if you can see a kind of a goldish cast on that sanding disc, but let's get up there. I sanded that brass string anchor on this disc, so it's got some gold in it. All right, the process is just, you know, pretty much just looking at the line and sanding into it. I don't have a task light right over here, so I usually just take my little flashlight and set it right here and dial the light in, and I can lean in and see what I'm doing. I have the vacuum cleaner and the disc all plugged into one outlet down here, and I'll just fire it up for a second. Just to show you what I'm sparing you from here. So that's the process of sanding that without all the noise. And I will just, I'll have the guitar body sitting here, the bench where the camera is. I've got the corner of my bench right behind that. And I'll just go from the sander to the guitar, make sure things are fitting, and I'm sure I'll bring you back in for the actual cutting of the plate. And that's basically, again, you trace the pattern that fits the guitar onto the actual plastic for the cover, and then router it. So I'll put a little trim router in the table router, little trim bit in the table router, and then just follow that around, and then that's done. Alrighty, I'm going to spare you all this noise. Alright, I've got about 3 minutes left on this card, so I'll make this as brief as possible. After, I don't know, innumerable trips back and forth to the sander, which I used to do this, by the way, before. Back up a second. If you're going to spend any money in your shop, you know, past the table saw, bandsaw is the second thing. Drill press is pretty important, but I'll tell you that 12-inch disc sander and that's a tabletop, and the little Grizzly orbital spindle sander that I have. And I think both of those items are like in the $120 range or something when I bought them. They may have gone up a little now, but money really well spent. I would have spent, I can't tell you how long, with a file or a rasp or sanding block, working something like this down by hand. And I got the biggest problem with the disc is that you can take so much material off really quickly that you have to really just finesse it, and it really is easy to kind of get overboard with it. But I worked this down to where I've got a 20,000. I did this by sight, actually. I mean, I have all these parallel lines here with the radiuses and all that, and I've eyeballed it in to where I liked the fit, and you can see it. You know, it feels loose here, but when I get lacquer rolling over the edge of this thing here, that's going to compensate for some of that. And you figure it turned out to be 20 thousandths. That's 10 thousandths of a gap all the way around, because it'll center up in there. And so this is a 20 thousandths gauge, so you can see it doesn't move with the gauge in it. And it could be different here than here because of the taper, so I had to make sure that I had a good line all the way around the thing. And here again, we're right there. And okay, guys, how you doing? Well, I've been sanding, both machine sanding and hand sanding the Nighthawk 9-string GECKO, walnut, mahogany, maple, rosewood in the back. So I've just took my glass off because it's so dusty. Anyway, so I'm going to do now is I'm going to raise the grain on this, and pretty much all it takes is a little water and a towel, so paper towel. And rather than just hose the body down, which it really wouldn't hurt anything, but I've sanded this whole thing down to 240. Also, I don't know if you've seen this since the last time. I've got the 2 holes in here now for the switches. This is for series parallel, volume tone, series parallel, three-way switch up on top here. I got the groove in for the string retainer bar, and I just punched a string ground hole through here. Normally, typically, I don't know, normal is the right word, typically, most folks, manufacturers, builders, will run a ground wire down under the bridge. So they'll go through the top somewhere around here and drill, slant drill into the control cavity. But this was just really handy. As deep as this is, it's a 1/2 inch deep. Just to poke a bit in there, and it just comes out right here. So that string bar will be grounded, which is the same thing as grounding the bridge. So that's what you're after. You want to get the strings grounded. So all you got to do to raise the grain is to just take some water and wood, and it's pretty much rub the whole thing down just like you're smearing finish on it. Make sure it gets down into the grain, so you want a fairly wet towel. The other thing that's kind of cool about doing this is it gives you a little prelude as to what the body might look like with finish on it. And I think I'm going to be extremely happy with that particular body right there. It's going to look really nice. So once you raise the grain over everything, so it's basically, you get everything wet, the grain raises, and you resand it. You sand it again with your finest paper. In this case, I'm going to go 240 again, and that is plenty fine. Then once I've sanded it again, and I blew all the dust out, so blew the dust out of the grain, but I'll do that again once I once I do the final sand. I'll blow all the dust out again. Then I'm going to seal this whole thing in shellac, 100% so shellac, and I'll thin it out. Probably be, you know, what you'd consider like a 1 pound cut, maybe even a little thinner, just so it soaks in good. I don't want it to fill pores. I want it to, I want it to sink into the pores, but seal the wood so that when I put filler on, I don't stain the wood. And I mentioned this a little bit. I think I mentioned this before, maybe not. Maybe I was thinking about talking about it. So what happens, Gibson, I know, I mean, they did do a cherry fill, and I think they may have done that on raw wood, but they didn't stain their wood, because when you stain end grain, it gets dark, much darker than the long grain on wood. So you may have noticed that some of the newer guitars that are being stained, you know, by their builders, rather than having the color, they call it floating the color in the lacquer. So if you seal the body and then you shoot a color on, when you shoot that color, you mix it in the lacquer and you shoot it on, then you have control over how much color goes into the end grain. It doesn't soak into the end grain and become unmanageable. Anyway, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to explain this properly. So, because on the back, I'm going to use a dark, maybe even a black grain filler, and I'll probably use it on the front as well, but the front wood is so much darker. I'd like to fill this grain on the back with some dark filler, and so that will really show up. But even past that, I may shoot some transparent color on the back as well, just to change the color up a little bit. I don't know. You can see what this is going to look like. Actually, this is a good test. I hadn't done this before, but if you look at what this Spanish cedar looks like, I think I said mahogany earlier when I was telling you what was in. This is actually Spanish cedar. Yeah, I think it is. I could be wrong. It could be mahogany. Spanish cedar and mahogany are very, very similar. Some would say that the Spanish cedar of today is more consistent with what mahogany was in the 50s Les Pauls. But, okay, I'm rabbit trailing really bad even for me. You can see the color variation between the walnut and the mahogany or Spanish cedar. Actually, it looks really good. Looks very nice. This, you know what? This is mahogany. The Spanish cedar is in the neck. And I will go as far as to say this is probably genuine mahogany, because I think the African that I have is a little redder than this. But anyway, I could put a little color on the mahogany, but I actually like this contrast. I think that looks pretty sharp. And then being that I've got this piece of maple in here, and you can see that this piece of maple gets pretty, gets a nice color to it too. It looks really white when it's dry, but when it's got that wet look on it, looks pretty good. Anyway, so that's all been wet down pretty good, and so call it raising the grain, but what it just kind of raises the fuzz on top, and then it'll just be a real light sanding with 240 to knock that down. Then I'll seal it with shellac, and then I'll grain fill it. I got all the little nuances here, and as I do the resand after this dries, I'll check all my radiuses again. I've got all my pickup cavities. These pickups aren't going to have rings on them, so all my pickup cavities have been rolled over. These cavities aren't standard size; they're small, which I do, and I'm not going to put rings on. I don't like a big gap. So around the pickups, around the jack pinhole there, I've eased that edge off. Around my plates, I've rounded the edges, rounded the edge here on this little top round one. When that's all lacquered, and also I use the edge around the that hole for the string bar. And so when you shoot lacquer on all that, if you have sharp edges, that'll just burn right through there when you're sanding. And you don't even sand the edges like that. You just blocks on the other bench. You just flat sand everything with a block, so you really don't put any down pressure there. If you were hand sanding through here, you'd accidentally hit that edge and it would just burn all the lacquer right off of it. At any rate, because once this is dry, I'll just do a quick resand, and then I'll shoot some shellac on that. All right. All right, well, I've been doing a little bit of work on this string retainer block. Just goes in here. I don't want to drop it in too far because it's hard to get out now that I got holes drilled through it. I've just, like I said, I got the holes drilled. If I can see in the lens, I got this light blinding me here. There you go. So holes all the way through. Started out with a 3/16. That's not quite halfway through, so not quite 1/4 inch deep. And then I went with a bit that was like 109 thousandths. I had a little smaller bit that I would have used, but it was around 80 thousandths. But it won't chuck up in my drill press, and so I had to go a little bit bigger, which is fine with the string ball and all that. I had like a number 45 or 46. Typical top string in an electric guitar. I think this one I've got in my hand is probably a D string, but and you're not going to be able to tell. More than likely, I'm having trouble telling. I'm looking right in the screen. Okay, maybe adjust this a little bit, but it goes in. Ball bottoms out. Anyway, yeah, like I said, you can't really see anything. So, it's perfect. I'm loving it. I already rough sanded it with 100 grit. That is a 240. Here's a 180. So, just like anything, you sand that you want to get to to a shiny finish. You just have to keep sanding up through the grits. So I'll go from this 180. I'll do the sides too, because this is going to be, I don't know exactly how proud of that. This is really, so maybe it's probably care of it, but I'm able to try to bother in there. And around the ends. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, and then just the radius on the edge, just like sand over radius, kind of round over the end while I do it. Or the line, you always end up sanding things off. So you just go around. Anyway, just going to do that until I work my way. That was 180. Go ahead and jump up to a 240 here and keep going. Work my way up to probably a couple thousand grit. Sorry about being not being in the camera. Like I said, just keep going until I work up to about 2,000. Then I'll buff it out, and it'll be pretty shiny. So I'll bring you back in after when I'm buffing the thing up a little bit, so you can get an idea of how good that can look. I was pretty surprised actually the first time I ever buffed up any brass, because I mean, it shines just like you've lacquered it, so pretty cool. And as you can see, it'll, once you get all your papers dug out, I've got to go dig up all the rest of my grits of paper so I can just stand here and blow through them really quick. But it doesn't take long. This right here, if I didn't want to shine on it, I'd be good to stop with it just like it is. Okay, so I've been standing here for half an hour sanding this piece of brass, and I'm up to the 2,000, and I'm going to grab my Dremel and the polishing compound. I just did a slight level crown and polish on a SG last night, so my Dremel's still set up with the buffing wheel on it. So I went through, well, I was at 240 when I turned the camera off. I went to 320, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,500, and then 2,000. You can see it. Get your hands nice and black, sanding on metal. And let's grab the Dremel. Body's been sitting here drying. It's pretty much dry. I didn't spend a lot of time on the sides, so there's some scratch marks in here from rougher grits, but up along the top edge it should be pretty good. Okay, I gotta get a piece of paper towel and some, I use preservation polish from Mac. Well, actually, I'm not going to use that right now. Oh yes, I will. Because I got residue on here from the buffer, and so I want to do a little of this polish on there to clean that off. I might also rub it down with some of this. I was just looking at nano polish. Just to see if that does anything for it. This is taking the buffing compound off. It's something I've found when I buff guitars on the big buffer with that compound. I have to go over it with this preservation polish to get the residue of the compound off the guitar. It also helps to pick up all the extra lint because the buffers really throw out a lot of lint. Okay. And there that is. I see some little lines in it, but I'm going to hit it with the nano polish and see if that helps at all. There's that. Let's see here. I'll zoom in a little bit on it. So that's not too bad, huh? And I was sanding it, if you noticed, before I was sanding it face down, flat on the table. So right after that, I went to sanding it just with my finger, and you can see it. I had chamfered these holes in a little bit so that I didn't have a sharp square edge. But pushing the paper back and forth on those helped to ease that edge there. I didn't want to have a sharp edge on that, so it feels really nice, and it looks pretty amazing, actually. Yeah, I'm going to hit it with the nano polish just for kicks and see what happens. I really like the look of that. Oops, I pan out here a little bit. So this is what it looks like in the guitar, and it's just barely proud of the body. Yeah, so you can't see any of the sides the way it's laying in there. And sanding the edges, the sides though, made it so that it fits in there better, so it drops in. Once I get the finish on this thing, it'll snug it up again. I'll probably have to sand the inside a little bit. All right. Yeah. All right. I'll turn you off here. Bring you back in later.